In the words of Justin Marshall, me oh my, I have enjoyed that. Yes, boy. What a game of Test match rugby that I've just watched. The full-time whistle has just gone at Twickenham Stadium, or Allianz, if you prefer, each to his own. But what a game of Test match rugby that was. And I don't want to spoil the result if you haven't seen it. So if you're waiting to see and you don't want to know, then please hit pause, go away, come back when you know the score and you're happy to watch this review. Otherwise, let's crack on. And let me say, congratulations to New Zealand. 24 points to 22. A third win for the ABs against England this season. There were 2 in July, 1 now at Twickenham, and in every single case, very little to choose between the two teams. A very narrow razor's edge, pun intended, knife edge result, and it's gone the AB's way 3 times. And I think ultimately, and the summary of this game would be, the All Blacks are just a little bit more dangerous with the ball than England, such that when things don't go for them, they can still rely on themselves to create enough opportunities to score enough points. And England, conversely, do a lot of things well, but lacking a little bit of fluidity in attack, and that their only try came from defensive pressure and a breakout from their own line, and something psychological with this England team, because not just the 3 games against New Zealand this year, but it happened in the match at the end of the Six Nations against France. There is just a trend with England, obviously under Steve Borthwick, the World Cup semi-final against South Africa. There is a trend with England to not be able to see out big matches against the best of oppositions. Now, England managed it the last game they played at Twickenham against Ireland, and I wondered if that might be the start of them turning a corner. But now, following this game, it looks like that game against Ireland was the exception that proves the rule. There is something about this England team right now that cannot quite do enough to get over the line. Hopefully this will be another opportunity for them to learn how that is done. But at the moment, it's not there, and some thoughts for Steve Borthwick to reflect on after this one. But I don't want to be negative. Yeah, I'm an Englishman, and I would have absolutely loved it if England had won. But I cannot think anything other than great things about Test match rugby when I was watching that game, and it's why this channel exists. I love rugby, and it was so intense. Twickenham was absolutely bouncing, and it was full on. It was shots on. There were people atomizing each other with their big hits. I loved it. Love that game. Your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you haven't already, I would love it if I would earn your subscription. And hey, look, there's loads of channels around on YouTube. I'm one of those channels that it's just me. It is just me. I've got no one else behind the scenes, no producer, no one else doing the artwork or anything like that. It's just me. And so I need your help. Giving the video a thumbs up can really help me spread the word. So England have only ever beaten New Zealand 8 times before in, well, the whole history of this fixture, and it was almost a 9th. But I want to start at the start. In fact, before the game even began, the haka was the big talking point. Thank you, Joe Marler, for that. How could you ever consider not having the haka as part of the pre-game curtain raiser when New Zealand play? And it provided a great bit of drama, and I absolutely loved the crowd singing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. It just, the All Blacks doing the haka, the English crowd getting behind their team, the English players stepping forward, the New Zealand players stepping forward. By the way, in the World Cup semi-final 2019, England got fined because they went beyond the halfway line. It was not a lot of money, a couple of £1,000s, which I think Joe Marlow actually was the one who actually paid. Anyway, New Zealand stepped beyond the 10-metre line. I'm fully expecting World Rugby to come out and fine New Zealand. For the record, I don't want to see New Zealand fined. What I actually want is World Rugby to just not be so precious and relax their rules and let New Zealand step forward beyond the 10. Let England step closer. As long as it's respectful, let them crack on. Anyway, it was a great curtain raiser to the game. And then England, well, actually, if that's before the game. If we jump to the end of the game, let me go to the end of the game. We got the grandstand finish as well. In terms of drama, we got the grandstand finish. There was 5 points in it. England had a lead with 10 minutes to go. England were 8 points up and should have closed the game out, but New Zealand managed to get a 3 and then pile the pressure on, start to win the scrum penalties. What more could you want from a Test match? I was about to say, my sort of, as I was going into the final 10 minutes, or particularly when England were 8 points up, I was thinking, this is showing a bit of maturity for England. Ben Curry's come on and is just cleaning out New Zealand's breakdown. George Ford and Harry Randall are really managing the game intelligently. vindication for Steve Borthwick's 6-2 split. I was getting ready to say all of these things. England had also been winning scrum penalties through the game, but actually it was the scrum and New Zealand's replacements, which Scott Robertson hasn't used very well, his replacements, since he's been in charge. He was forced into an early change of Asafo Amua, and the props that came on, the replacement props that came on, got the better of Cole and Finn Baxter, and it was the scrum penalties for New Zealand that gave them territory and opportunity, and ultimately the try. I really hope, and I'm sitting here in England at the moment, I really hope that the fact is being broadcast on TNT Sport, as all these November tests are in the UK, I really hope that doesn't mean there were a lot of people that missed watching this, because I know it's another subscription channel for some people and they may not have done it. So a question, if you can, was it being played in pubs around England, Wales, Scotland, wherever? Was it in pubs? Was it being watched? Were you able to see it? Or are you coming to this channel because you can't afford another 30 quid a month and £31 a month, whatever it is, and you didn't actually get to see it? Because I just hope people saw that, because it was such a good game. As for the game itself, let's start at the start. England were getting on top with their blitz defence. Clearly, that put that question to bed. Felix Jones may have gone. The blitz defence is still there, and it does cause chaos. It's high risk, high reward sometimes, and I'll come to New Zealand managing to take advantage of it. But England, for the most part, were getting on top of New Zealand. The New Zealand defenders, when England were in attack, didn't know who to tackle and were giving away loads of penalties for off-the-ball tackles. There were loads of cross-field kicks and over-the-top line-outs. It was just quite an interesting and unusual game to watch in the early stages. England's first decent attack, but they had no cutting edge, and that is a trend that continued through the whole match. But Marcus Smith took the 3 points, which was also a trend for the first half. England not having the cutting edge to score tries, but doing enough and squeezing enough penalties to get 4 pens themselves. Marcus Smith shanking a drop goal at the end of the half, and that shouldn't be forgotten. That shouldn't be forgotten. I'm not trying to go in on Marcus Smith or George Ford, but quite often everyone just focuses on the final moment in a match. In fact, let me do that. Let me jump forward to the drop goal at the end of the second half that could have won the game. George Ford's going to get a load of stick for that. He's been England's hero with the drop goals. Think back to the World Cup and that game against Argentina, the first night in Marseille. I was there, and he was absolutely imperious. Well, firstly, go back and look at it. I'm not convinced about that pass. I think it was a bit too loopy from Harry Randall, and as a result, New Zealand's chase, which was really good, to be fair, they were on George Ford, putting him under pressure. But equally, you shouldn't forget there was 2 drop goals missed in the first half. Really poor attempts from Marcus Smith. My point being, not to pile on to any individual, just to say there is never ever a single point of failure. And one of the things that people in the media and one of the things that people on social media like to do is to try and make what is very, very complex very, very simple and just go, that's his fault. That's because of that. And it could so easily have been different. And if England had taken care of business at scrum time, or England had taken the drop goal opportunities in the first half, or England had just sorted their attack out in general and actually taken a lot of territory and possession and scored a try, you don't leave it to a drop goal the last moment of the match. And that's the lesson that England have got to learn. If you just come away from a game like that and you go, that player is at fault because he did that, and that's all that's just not how a game of rugby works. That's not how Steve Borthwick will be thinking. That's not how, when I coach, that's not how I think about the game, and I just don't think it's how anyone should be thinking. So I feel sorry for George Ford, so many times the hero, and he's going to be feeling awful tonight. And I think a load of people on social media and journalists that should know better are going to chase clicks by just putting it all on that. England have got something fundamental they need to get past psychologically to squeeze these games out. And there was not one single point of failure. But back to the game itself. Massive shots going in all over the shop. I loved it. Like I say, I don't know why. Sometimes people have been a bit embarrassed to just say something simple like, you love watching rugby because of the giant, brutal, violent hits that go in. I love it. It's one of the reasons I watch the game. And shots raining in. George Martin and Chandler Cunningham South were just obliterating New Zealand ball carriers. The flip side of that, though, Tom Curry, good to see him back. He was just hitting everything. The flip side of that is this blitz defence does leave England open. And ultimately, New Zealand, on a couple of occasions in that first half, managed to take England's disorganisation and turn it in their favour. With firstly Mark Talea isolating Ellis Genge on the blind side. And, well, that's just not a contest, is it? And I said in my pre-match video, Mark Talea is 10% eel. I think he might actually be 15 or 20% eel in that one. And then later on in the first half, Will Jordan again isolated Ellis Genge. He probably stepped away. When you're the guard next to a breakdown, I think he probably rushed across too much and left the hole back inside. But that said, Beauden Barrett and Will Jordan creating a 2-on-1 against Ellis Genge. There's only one winner there, and Bodie just put him through that hole, and Will Jordan, grease lightning. And that's an awesome combination. New Zealand managed to do this as well without Cody Taylor, who was their best player in the Rugby Championship. He went off early. That was a blow for them. And New Zealand also will look back at the video and they'll reflect on how wasteful they were in that first half. There were big moments where they could have converted and put the game beyond England, maybe, and they didn't take advantage of it. 20 minutes in, they managed to hack the ball through. Cortez Ratimer went off his feet with a really good counter ruck. Probably would have been a try for New Zealand if they'd been able to get that ball. I think probably New Zealand were lucky that they ended up in that position, because I think I think it should have gone back for, was it a knock-on or something? Anyway, there was a reason why I thought Angus Gardner should have called the ball back, and try not to be biased about that one. I thought Angus Gardner, well, first and foremost, it was a really entertaining game. So the referee is a big part of that. He was quite loose. And when there was another opportunity when New Zealand should have scored, Tupu Vai knocking the ball on after Wallace Satiti made a brilliant break, footwork and wheels, more on him in a minute. And the pass, maybe the pass wasn't quite good enough. I think Faye Waboso put just a little bit of pressure on him, so he couldn't get the pass cleanly to Tupu Vai, who should have caught it and scored. But I mean, I think it should have been a penalty to England, because I'm sure Wallace Satiti was offside when he gathered that ball. But fortunately, it didn't matter, because it didn't score. And yeah, like I say, the first half ended with Marcus Smith fluffing a drop goal. 12-14, game on. Time to go and get a cup of tea and watch that Brian Habana Sage advert. That never gets boring, does it? I spotted that my opponent was slow in the turn. So yeah, and then the second half, the drama rained down, and well done to both these teams for putting on a brilliant spectacle, for the crowd, for just being on top form. England started well in the second half, defensive pressure, forcing a poor exit, but then they messed up the line out, and this was one of the themes of the second half. England's set piece started to malfunction. Firstly, the line out, and later it would be the scrum. And it looked like we'd made so much ground in that first half. And you have to say well done to Will Stewart for that. And Ellis Genge, who looks bigger, maybe a little slower, and that's why he got isolated, but bigger. And that seems to have had a good impact in the scrum, but it didn't last the whole game. That's a big issue for them. Equally, New Zealand, as I've already said, Scott Robertson's come under justified criticism because he didn't use his bench very well in the Rugby Championship. Tuipulotu came on and made a big difference. And the two props that came on, they made a big difference as well. So maybe Scott Robertson is also learning. And again, they found a way. But it was England's defence that forced a try, and their first proper lead in the game. Their first try, it was a Smith intercept. Ratimer shouldn't have given the pass. He was passing blind to Bodie Barrett. New Zealand were a bit flat-footed. Smith was quickly onto it. Through he goes. Very intelligent, not to give the pass, but to dummy pump, commit a couple of New Zealand defenders, calmly lift the ball to George Furbank, and then Emmanuel Faye-Waboso, both of them who showed proper wheels and just determination to get there in support. And it was a brilliant try. I love an intercept try from inside your own half. Just when you play rugby, that's one of my favourite tries. When my team would always score it, it just feels so good when you got that rear guard action and you break out and give them a sucker punch. And that's how it felt. And you thought at this point, with England's defence on top, Ben Curry came on and started just going after New Zealand's breakdown. Maro Itoje making a nuisance of himself at the breakdown. New Zealand was still committing loads of penalties. But like I say, things gradually changed. Tuipulotu made a big part of that. That said, Smith did a 50-22. and you thought, right, they're going to control the game. Then we had one of those situations where there was a free kick from a scrum. New Zealand gave up the free kick. England couldn't call for another scrum, which at the time was going well, and they did the up and under, and it just went through Henry Slade's hands. That was one of those moments it could have been different, but then it started to turn. Beauden Barrett, it looked like, had scored a try. I mean, I was sat there going, deliberate knock on, surely, Caleb Clark, what's going on? And I don't know, I'll have to go back and check this. Did 3 phases go by before the try after that deliberate knock on? Because I don't know, I think I'm right that the laws are that you can go back a couple of phases. So, I mean, you could argue that the try should have stood. The right decision was made in the end by Angus Gardner. Big fan of the ref mic, by the way, letting the crowd understand. That was just one of the loudest cheers of the day, when the whole crowd could hear the referee announcing that it was a deliberate knock-on. England got a penalty and got an 8-point lead from that Caleb Clark deliberate knock-on. 8-point lead on what was that? Into the final quarter. England have got to see these games out. But fair play to New Zealand. Like I say, the scrum started to put pressure on. England started to be the ones coughing up the penalties. New Zealand were playing good territorial rugby, speeding the game up, finding holes, and again, Mark Talea, an amazing finish. How good a finisher is that guy? And I don't know, he just feels better on the right wing. I like it. So that combination of wingers looks deadly for New Zealand, especially with Will Jordan at the back there. But with New Zealand ahead, they got the penalty first and then the try. England were pushing for the win. Penalty. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. It's always easy to say after the fact what you should have done. But here's a thought. Should England have let Henry Slade have that penalty kick? Bearing in mind it was from over on the right-hand side of the pitch. Henry Slade is left-footed and has been kicking. He's been the main man kicking for Exeter Chiefs, and he has hit some of the most clutch kicks that you've seen in big matches for Exeter. Easy to say now, and George Ford hit the post anyway. And then England had that opportunity at the end. And again, before you start just focusing on the drop goal, England had a 5-metre scrum. What better platform could you want? But England completely ballsed up their scrum. They got nudged by New Zealand, fair play to them. It was a poor pass, and suddenly England were outside their own 22. And as I say, I didn't think the pass from Harry Randall, who I love, by the way, wasn't very good to George Ford, who I love, by the way. So lots of small things, but fair play New Zealand. Love that test match. So good. Do you know what? This is just my immediate thoughts. Obviously, I try and put this video out as soon after full-time whistle as I can. I'll return with some more considered thoughts when I've had a chance to kind of digest it a little bit. But just how good is Test Match Rugby? And if that's anything to go by, we're in for a treat for the next few weeks. By the way, how could I finish this video without saying I did a video before this morning. It went out, and it was talking about the Breakthrough Player of the Year at the World Rugby Awards. And my 2 top contenders for that at the moment, or before the game, Emmanuel Faye-Waboso and Wallace Satiti, as well as Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu, who cannot play this November because of injury. But those 2 boys, Emmanuel Faye-Waboso and Wallace Satiti, they've got to be on the shortlist. They're both so good. But Wallace Satiti's performance today was immense. Immense. So it's advantage to him. No doubt about that. Right, I will be back on the channel. Thank you very much for your support. Give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.